Good evening, everyone. It is
I know.
5:30, and I'm here to entertain a motion about the consideration of the work session and regular meeting agendas.
So you need to,
I need
okay,
a
Mayor
move.
Claffey. I move to approve the work session and regular meeting agendas with the following changes. As to the work session, the addition of a closed meeting to be item 5 for discussion of the performance of the city manager in consultation with legal counsel related to matters involving the First Amendment of the United States Constitution.
Sounds official. I'll second
Thank you
that.
for the motion. We have a second.
Yeah.
Mr. Kesker, could you call the roll, please?
Miss Edwards,
Yes. Aye.
Mr. Airwood,
Aye.
Miss Woods,
Aye.
Mr. Campbell. Aye. Mr. Robertson,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Darby,
Aye.
Mayor Claffey.
Aye.
Motion carries.
And I've just been warned by my city manager that there is a change on the second item. It will now be after the update from the Central Shenandoah Planning District Commission regarding Lewis Street Transit Hub Improvement Project, Bright Transit System, and Afton Express. Ms. Beauregard.
Yes, we have members of the Planning District Commission here to walk us through some changes that you'll see happening on Lewis Street in the coming months, and as they do improvements to the hub, and then also the alternative kind of transit hub, I'll put that in quotes, that we've been working with them on for several months now. So I'll introduce the fine folks from the PDC to come up and introduce themselves to everybody. And I think they have a presentation or some maps to show as well, kind of visualizing where the temporary hub will go during that time period. So, what?
Welcome.
Oh, okay. Oh, you have maps in your hand, actually. Oh, and they'll have it on the screen.
Thank you, Mayor Claffey and members of council. It's great to be here tonight. My name is Ann Cundy. I'm the Director of Transportation for the CSPDC. And there we go. So I'll sit tight here until the slides are up. So before we dive into our plans for the downtown transit hub, just a little bit of overview of the Bright Transit system and some updates on what's going on with the Bright system, as well as our Afton Express route over the mountain to Charlottesville. Then we'll talk about the plans for rehabilitating the hub itself, as well as where we'll have that temporary bus transfer operation. And then we'll be happy to take your questions. So the Bright Transit system is regional, and it has been for decades. So when our region became officially urbanized after the 2010 census, the Federal Transit Administration and the State Department of Rail and Public Transportation contacted us and said, the private not-for-profit that's been running rural transit service in this Staunton, Augusta, Waynesboro region can no longer do that. You are now urbanized, and we need to give those transit operating funds to a public entity. Would you consider taking this on? And as we always do, we said yes. And so now 11 years on, we are the grantee for federal and state transit operating and capital funds. And we continue to operate Bright Transit under contract with Virginia Regional Transit. So they are our contracted service provider. They own the buses, they hire the drivers, they maintain the buses, and they do that all from our transit facility over in Fishersville on Ivy Ridge Road. So we receive those federal and state funds, and we match those with local dollars from the 3 jurisdictions, as well as a handful of additional funding partners like Augusta Health, WWRC, Valley Program, or no, not VPAS, hopefully soon Valley Community Services Board. And so collectively, they come up with that local match requirement to run the system. With that, I'll turn it over to my colleague, Paula Melister, to provide you with some recent statistics on the Bright system, as well as Afton Express.
Thank you,
Welcome.
Ann. Good evening. I'm Paula Malister. I'm a regional planner at the CSPDC. I work primarily with the transit team and the Afton Express. And tonight I have some notes here about Bright and Afton. We have a very exciting year with strong improvement in our ridership. Every year that we come out of the pandemic, ridership continues to grow. We're not quite at those pre-pandemic levels yet, but we did see a 20% increase in ridership on the Bright transit system as a whole from 2022 to 2023. The downtown trolley and north and west loops that serve Staunton have also increased by about 20% in the last year, so that's promising. We see a lot of friendly faces out there riding the trolley and looping around the city and utilizing that Staunton transit hub. The most significant increase we saw in the Staunton region for transit this year was the paratransit and demand service, which is on-demand service that allows our transit operators to get folks from their homes to appointments when they cannot easily get to a bus or to a bus stop on their own. We help those patients get from their homes in Staunton to Augusta Health, to dialysis, and to many other critical points. So it's really important that we can meet that capacity. We've added another bus to the midday peak this past year to be able to accommodate that. And we're looking forward to options this coming year to grow that even more. Also happening in the Bright world right now is the implementation of a mobile data collection system. We've contracted with Passio Technologies and have installed all these wonderful mobile tablets on our buses so that our drivers no longer have to track on and off counts with paper and pencil. Figure it's 2024, we should get on that. But they are now going to be able to track on and off counts by every stop in the system. They'll be able to track what type of fare type each person is using so that we have so much more data available to help us make decisions about the future of the routes. Move on to the Afton Express. So as you might know, the Afton Express is the newest route of the Bright Transit system. A commuter bus service that was launched in 2021 serves the Staunton, Augusta, and Waynesboro region, connecting riders to Charlottesville and Albemarle County every day. Afton Express provided 16,482 trips in 2023, a 59% increase from last year. Last year was our first full calendar year of service, so we grew significantly in that time, and we're seeing those numbers continue to grow, which is wonderful. In 2023, we expanded the service, adding a 5th trip in the evening, more time points in the morning, and a new stop at the Omni Hotel in Charlottesville. That is located really close to the downtown mall, to the courthouse, to many other critical places. And then the last highlight of this year for Afton Express was we entered into a partnership with Woodrow Wilson Workforce Center to allow their students to ride the Afton Express for free. They've been a longtime partner with Bright Transit. Their students have ridden Bright Transit for free, and now this extends to the Afton Express. It's been really instrumental in helping them get connected to job training opportunities in Charlottesville and in that Albemarle area that's beyond what we have here nearby. So I will turn it over to Ann so that she can tell you about our most exciting project, the Lewis Street Transit Hub.
All right. So this is arguably the first construction project that Paula or I has administered. So that's new and different. But as a little bit of background on this parking lot, American Shakespeare Center owned it since the late 90s. And over the course of those years, they leased the parking spaces to the city, and the city of Staunton allowed the buses to hub there. So again, that arrangement predated our management of the transit system. So we inherited that arrangement. So when American Shakespeare decided that they were ready to sell that lot in 2020, they approached the city. That was during the pandemic. Was not a great time to be acquiring new assets when revenues were not solid, we'll say. And when we did a scan of downtown Staunton in partnership with city staff, we determined that there really is not a better site. That this is off street, but it's centrally located. It has enough parking, and that it was necessary to retain ownership of this so that we could preserve that asset for transit. So the CSPDC acquired the lot from Shakespeare in 2021 and turned around and leased the parking spaces back to the city so that the city could continue to provide that free public parking, particularly for overflow events, right? This is a little bit more off the beaten path than other free parking in Staunton, but nonetheless useful and important. So we acquired the lot fully knowing that it was going to need significant improvements. It already had potholes, it lacked sidewalks or any sort of Americans with Disabilities Act compliant facilities, doesn't really have any lighting, right? Like it was really lacking a lot of the things that we would like to see in a true transit hub. So we applied to the Federal Transit Administration in 2021 for a bus and bus facilities discretionary grant, a competitive grant. And we found out in early 2022 that we were successful. That was about $1.2 million, 90% of which is federal. The Department of Rail and Public Transportation matched that. And then we chipped in some additional local match as well from the Bright reserves. And so with that in place, we procured an engineering firm, Kimley Horn and Associates, and got underway. So that's where we are now. We are in the pre-construction phase. Our invitation for bids has been out for several weeks now. Our bid opening is on March the 6th. So if all goes according to plan and we receive a competitive bid, we could award or issue a notice to proceed and award that contract as early as March the 26th and be underway in early April. So we have stated explicitly that the contractor needs to wrap this up in 4 months. And on balance, it's not a terribly complicated construction project. So to pave a parking lot and build that sidewalk, but I'm going to click over in a minute and show you some of the design elements from what Kimley Horn and has worked with us to develop. But that's our timeline for construction. Okay. So I would say the biggest change that we're going to see in this lot is that instead of asphalt, we are constructing the entire facility in concrete. That does increase the price, but it also dramatically increases the longevity of the lot so that those heavier buses can roll through there year after year, and we aren't worried about that asphalt giving out. There will be fewer joints where water and ice can get in. So what we worked with the city's Historic Preservation Commission was introducing some design elements into that plan for concrete to visually break up that space. And so we are going to have slightly tinted concrete, a darker tint for the bus lane and the parking itself, which you can see here in our rendering, and then a lighter tint for the sidewalk, that retaining wall with the seat cap that provides additional seating there back by the bus. And then as a nod to brick sidewalks elsewhere in the city, we are going to stamp that herringbone brick pattern into those crosswalks. And then of course, make sure that like the rest of downtown, we're using those terracotta rust colored truncated dome plates rather than those really day glow yellow ones that we don't like quite as much. Some other design elements of this project include that vernacular street lighting. So we got the specs for the lights from the city's Central Avenue Streetscape project so that those tie in and match. We also will have the conduit run for future EV charging stations there on site. It'll have a dedicated bus lane at the back, and that will be accessible completely via that sidewalk that goes along the back of the lot, which also then ties into or provides direct access to the city's crushed gravel pathway that goes up the hill through the woods to Fillmore Street and continues on to the top of Reservoir Hill. And then additionally, some native landscaping to go back in there, provide some nice succession across the seasons. So that is the design concept for the hub. So I hope you'll agree that that is a market improvement
looks
over what
wonderful.
is out there.
Love it.
Yeah.
Even better over here.
Yeah.
It's terrific.
Fantastic. Okay. So what are we going to do for those 4 months while we're under construction? I'm going to turn it back over to Paula, and she is going to fill you in on our temporary transfer site. Ready?
Yes, as Anne mentioned, when we were originally looking at alternative locations back in 2020, when we thought we might need to move the hub, North Augusta Street was one of the sites that was looked at. It was determined that long-term that was not a good solution, but it does provide some temporary option for the buses to hub during construction, primarily because these angled spaces have such a buffer between them, the sidewalk, and the driving lanes. This really provides an opportunity for the buses to pull completely out of the path of travel and allows passengers to board and alight safely. It also allows enough space for wheelchair lifts to be deployed, which is pertinent for ADA access. So what we will have is a channelized lane for the buses to pull off of North Augusta Street, entering into the spaces just past Academy Street. There will be water-filled barricades just on the outside of the travel lane so that there's not any pedestrians walking into that space and that the buses can have their room separate from traffic. We expect it to take up about 19 parking spaces between Academy Street and then heading down towards Frederick. That final note on the far left of the image that has a notated there is the last parking space that we would anticipate utilizing. So that gives the buses enough space to pull out safely, re-enter traffic before reaching the intersection at Frederick. The nice thing about this option is that it's relatively close to Lewis Street, so we're not inconveniencing our passengers too much. And in the event that they do arrive at the transit hub not aware that it's been relocated, it's not a very difficult walk to get from there over to Augusta. Like Anne said, we expect construction to take 4 months or less, so hopefully this won't be too long of a setup, but we do think that it's the best option. We've been very gracious to city staff in helping us identify a location that works for everyone, that's safe, and that can be deployed easily without any major construction reconfiguration or any other disruption to city traffic and pedestrian flow. I think that's all we had, and we are happy to take any questions. We have a question slide here that shows the rendering of the lot from the southern end of the street. You can see a little bit better. The shelters will be relocated to the back side of the lot. There'll be some beautiful landscaping separating the parking spaces from the bus terminal. So when you're looking at it from the street, that's all shielded by beautiful native plants. But I'm happy to leave it on this slide, or I can go back to the temporary hub slide if anyone has any questions.
Academy's, yeah.
First pass.
You're actually on the Staunton side of where the Hardee's lot comes out. The Hardee's.
Yes, yeah. The spaces on the other side of Academy Street will not be impacted. So the buses will be pulling in just past the bank entrance and utilizing that first set
The
of
bank
spaces.
entrance.
Yep.
That is,
You want-
okay.
You want?
No, it's the
No,
First
further
Citizens,
down.
It's further down.
Okay, yeah.
the First Citizens, yeah.
First Citizens and First Bank.
Well, I think it looks spectacular.
And all of the parallel spaces on the opposite side of the street will be available. So hopefully anybody displaced by this will still have opportunities to park close by.
And I would say most of these spots are not utilized all the time.
Thinking about that, I don't know how they're used during the day, but it's a great nearby spot to use as a temp. And I was there for the various presentations for the Historic Commission, and you guys really did a great job of bringing it across, and these renderings really help a lot too to idea for it, but it'll be a great addition.
Yep, the stamped pattern is really nice.
It's pretty.
Yeah.
Well done.
Thank you.
All right, another question. What percentage of the match is the city giving to Bright and the Well, you said there was a matching grant that we were going to be required to pay.
No, there's no additional match requirement for the city of Stanton on this project.
So what is the current financial obligation of the city of Stanton?
I would need to get back to you with the specific number, but when we submit our budget request to Stanton each year, we include that specific amount of like Stanton's share of the roughly 25% local match. That's between operating and capital cost of contracting. So I'm happy to get back to you with that number, but you're one of, I think, 6
7.
local funding partners. So that's part of our budget request each year is the city of Stanton's assessment, their contribution to local match for the Metropolitan Planning Organization, as well as Bright Transit.
Leslie, do you have it?
I can look it up,
Oh, I
but
just
it'll give me a
wondered.
minute.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then my other question is, how long does it take to get to Charlottesville from Stanton?
On the Afton Express,
Yes.
I'll let Paul answer that one. She's the expert.
It's about between 40 and 45 minutes.
That's good.
Can be a little longer with traffic. As you know, there's sometimes a backup heading up the mountain when you're coming back west.
Yeah.
But our transit riders are so appreciative and thankful. We see in the comments we receive from them time and again that this has increased the longevity of them at their jobs by not being so stressed with their travel.
Right.
It's opened up job opportunities. It allows people to stay living here in Stanton and Waynesboro where they love it and still have jobs that they can get over to easily.
So, I have a question. What is the cost for the Afton
The
Express?
Afton Express is $3 each way.
Okay, and that's been like that ever since it started?
Yep.
And how about the trolley and the transit? Have they increased or they've been the same?
I think they're still 25 cents and then up to 50 cents on certain routes.
I got one. You said a lot of this was federally funded, correct? I'm more interested in the Afton Express. I mean, that every day and several trips, is it budgeted in, or as far as breakdowns, what kind of wear and tear does it have on these buses going over the mountain, several times a day? And
Yeah, that's a great question. So as Ann mentioned, we contract the services out to Virginia Regional Transit. They actually own and maintain all of the buses. We do not manage any of that fleet ourselves. They charge us a service contract rate, which is basically a contract rate per hour of service. And that allows them to be able to maintain those buses and keep them in tip-top shape. We just acquired a new bus, well, new to us last year when we expanded, and it came from another location elsewhere, but still had tons of useful life left. And that's been out on the route. Minimal breakdowns.
Great. And what's your capacity on the bus going from Stanton to Charlottesville, and what type of occupancy do you run?
So the buses that we operate range between 32 and 35 passengers. They're body on chassis buses running on diesel fuel. And most of the time they're between 20 and 50% full. When we first started, everyone had a seat to themselves. They got very happy with that. But now that ridership has picked up, our highest record day was 27 passengers on a single bus. But because we operate 4 trips over in the morning and 5 trips back, our ridership is distributed across those 4 or 5 trips. So we have not yet reached capacity on any single bus, but if we keep growing, it's coming soon.
I can see it, yeah, because that'd be great.
Oh, this is this.
Yeah, it's a wonderful option.
Yes.
I have the answers to the question for the budget.
Okay.
So for this current fiscal year we're in, it's about 85,000, just under that. Does that sound right, you think? And then that's for Bright. And then as far as the Afton Express, it's 11,350.
Hour apart,
Correct.
85 and then 11.
Yeah, so Bright and then Afton. Yeah, so
So less than 100,000.
in total, correct?
96,000.
Yeah, in total.
That's an awesome thing. Yeah. Thank you, ladies, for what you're doing. We really. Any other questions from council? No, but that's good. That's good. Wonderful news. Thank y'all.
Thank you all.
And good luck. And that's a very aggressive schedule
I
of
know, I look
the
forward
bids
to it.
going out in the beginning of March, and you're going to start construction by the end of March.
And then done in 4 months.
for the graphic. We are very fortunate that concrete is less dependent on weather than asphalt. So hopefully
Good
we'll have a
point.
mild season.
Let's hope.
That's a good point. And thought of that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for the update and good luck.
Thank you.
Interesting. All right, now next item on the agenda is a discussion of a request for a sister city partnership. Ms. Beauregard.
Sure. So last month, I was approached by Mr. Bruce Fox. He's with the Stonewall Brigade Band, requesting that the city develop a sister city partnership with, I'm not going to say this right, I apologize, Gerstolfen, Germany. Is that pretty close? Okay, good. I didn't exactly do it too wrong. So back in 2022, the community band from this city came to Staunton, and they'll be coming back this June 24. We've had sister city requests in the past, and Mr. Fred Blanton is also here. He is the Virginia State Representative with Sister Cities International, and he can speak to the kind of the history of these requests and kind of what this means to be a sister city and kind of how things have been handled in the past. So I think I'll go ahead and invite Mr. Blanton up first to kind of talk through that process. And then if you have any questions for Mr. Fox, and I believe there's another representative from his band here as well. So Mr. Blanton, I'll go ahead and let you turn it over to you.
Welcome.
Thanks a lot. Yeah, I think most of y'all know me one way or another. We built a historically sympathetic house in Newtown on an empty lot. And I chair your Lewis Creek Committee. I'm on the board of Augusta Health Foundation. I'm on the board of Staunton Music Festival. I helped found Shenandoah Green, and we run a composting program that's free to the community, as well as a tree program and Earth Day. And probably left something out there. I don't know. Oh, I'm a Rotarian. But what you didn't know is that I'm actually the state rep for Sister Cities. I was an exchange student in 1983 to Germany. And then when I came back and got my first job in St. Louis, the local Sister City program asked me to join their board as their first young member. And so I got hooked and stayed with it for the rest of my life. And eventually got elected to the national board and was on that for 2 terms. I was the treasurer of Sister Cities International for 3 years. And then eventually made my way into my favorite job now, which is the state rep for one of our 50 states. And I represent Virginia. And so I've talked before to previous iterations of this board, and I've explained the context, but I probably didn't do as good of a job. And so this time what I did was throw together a quick pamphlet. Did everybody get a copy?
Yes.
You don't have to read all the details now, and I won't go through them all right now, but I just wanted it as background. So there are about 16 cities in Virginia who are currently members of Sister Cities International, and they have sister cities, just like we say we do. And they have very developed programs, and they do lots of programming, and the sister city programs in each of these towns is meaningful and important to the community in various ways. I work with all of them. I've met every single one of them over the years that I've lived here in Virginia and at various times. And so I'm familiar with all of them. I travel around in my spare time and go visit them, and I help them develop sustainable partnerships. They're organized in any number of ways. So I try to just capture some interesting facts about each one, how they're organized. Some have city commissions, some are just local groups, some are actually 501c3 organized, some are a mixture, some are a hybrid, some have paid staff even because they're so developed and they do so much. Across the whole country, there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of sister cities. Not all of them are members of Sister Cities International. There are quite a few towns who collect relationships or partnerships, much like Staunton has done over the years. And so, you know, we have 3 right now that we call sister cities. One is with Vășul de Sus in Romania. How we got that is there was a guy from there, Vășul de Sus, who came over in the 1860s because he was just shocked that slavery was still going on, and he joined the Union Army and became very, very successful and was some sort of an officer until he got to the battle that was over here near Staunton. Didn't think things didn't go so well for him, and he got killed, and he's buried in our Union Cemetery. So if you pull in to the cemetery right now, pull your car right up to the flagpole, park, look to your left, you'll see a marker there that's not so much in English, but more in Romanian, and that's the guy. And so their town has a very similar feel to Staunton. They're sort of in the mountains. They have a frontier culture park like ours. They have a train excursion train, and they came looking for their guy, and they found him here. And the then Mayor John Avoli at the time said, wow, you know, this is a pretty cool story. And they said, let's be sister cities. And so boom, done. Kind of the way I sort of draw an analogy is the way we like to tell people now is that it's really good to date for a while before you get married. This was a situation where, I don't know, one night stand, marriage after that, boom. And nothing really came of it after that. Then we moved on to Dabash, Hungary. And so at the time, Jim Hallis was our assistant city manager and Dave Metz was our vice mayor. And they, with their wives, went on a trip to Hungary and they had a great time, found this little town southeast of Budapest called Dabash. And coincidentally, I think Jim is of Hungarian descent, and the Blue Ridge Community College said, hey, you know, there's this little school there, maybe we should do something with them. Which that's a thing that happens with sister cities all the time. And so they formed a partnership. They went and visited, loved the town, formed a partnership. Boom, nothing happened. So that was that. And so it's just a sign now, just like the other one. And then the third came along, which was in my time, and you all asked me to come talk to it. And that was when the North Macedonian folks were exploring their own history and realized that they're really a country because Woodrow Wilson, they got his attention at the end of World War I. And instead of drawing their region into 3 or 4 or 5 different sections and partitioning them off to the various winners of the war, they convinced Wilson to draw a big circle around them and keep them whole. So they consider Wilson the father of their country, which is very important to them. And so they came looking for him in DC, found him buried in the National Cathedral, went to his home there, which happens to be a historic National Trust home. And then the people there knew my husband, Bob, who used to work for the National Trust, and that he was living in Staunton, and they knew about the Woodrow Wilson Library here. So they sent the group here. They met Staunton, they met Robin von Seldeneck, match made in heaven. And so boom, we're sister cities. I did pull Robin aside after that. And I said, hey, you know, there's other ways to do this rather than just a quick date and a trip. And now we're sister cities. And so she heeded my suggestions, and I talked with her just the other day when y'all asked me to come talk here, and she has maintained relationships with them. It's not a one and dead relationship at all. It's quite the opposite. And she's already been brainstorming with me and others about quite a few things that could be done with sister cities. So that kind of gets me back to this request. We actually had a previous relationship with a town in Germany, Hort, Germany. If some of you are from here, you'll recall when Frank Stressler used to work at the Frontier Culture Park before he was at Historic Staunton. And one of his jobs there was to go to Germany and find a house that was of the period, 1700s, that would represent the German settlers here in the valley, because we couldn't find one. They found an English one and an Irish one and others, but they didn't find the German one. And so they found one in Hort. They took it apart, brought it over here. Well, we bought it, I think. And then their band came over twice, at least, maybe 3 times, and played at our Oktoberfest. And so I kind of thought maybe that would develop into a relationship, but then nothing really happened after that. And then this new one is coming, which is even better in a sense. We don't have a house here from them, but they have a community band much like ours. I've talked with Mr. Fox prior to today, and I understand he has a much deeper relationship there. And the band has, of course, been here and they're going back, and ours is going there. And so there's definitely the beginnings of what could develop into a sustainable relationship. But, and this is the but, if you look through this list of all these relationships, the 16 in Virginia, every one of them has a variety of connections. It's not just built on one thing. And we have a theme here in Staunton with the one thing, and then we make a partnership. And so what I'm offering to you all is that if you all would join Sister Cities, which is just for the size of our town, which is $440, you not only get the access to the entire network in the country, but you get me too. I do live here already. I mean, yeah, you sort of already have me, but, and you know, truth be told, if you really twisted my arm, I'd probably do all this for free anyway. But all I would ask is that you would join Sister Cities, because it's kind of an embarrassment actually when people say, Fred, where are you from? Oh, I'm from Staunton. Oh, I don't think they're a member. Yeah, I know. I'm working on that. So what I would like to do, and I have been doing a lot of research here in town because I've had quite a few years here now. And so I've been talking with Stuart Hall. I've talked with the Frontier Culture Park most recently. The guy there is Davis Tierney. He's very gung ho about all this. I've talked with Robin quite a few times over at Woodrow Wilson House. I've talked with folks at Mary Baldwin, Staunton Public Schools. You know, they're open to student exchanges. There's 100 churches in town. Some of them need something to do, I think. This could be helpful. And I think, and I know this is counterintuitive, but I think that we could actually add a few more relationships. So it'd be good to have a German one. It would also be good to have an Irish one. John Lewis is from Donegal, Ireland. There's a well-documented story about that. The Frontier Culture Park has 2 other buildings from 2 other Ulster counties. I think it's Tyrone and Fermanagh over there. So there's sort of a precedent for having a relationship, and Donegal does not have a sister city right now. And that could be a cool thing that we could explore. And there's a lot of Irish people that live here. Also, we don't have a sister city in Africa, but we could. And again, there's a village, Igbo Nigerian village, that's recreated over at the Frontier Culture Park. That's for a reason. It's not just random. You know, there's been a lot of studies about where the enslaved were brought from to our particular area. Everybody has a different story. You know, Hampton seems to be Angola, but our region seems to be more Igbo Nigeria. So there are plenty of cities in Nigeria that are in dire need of sister cities in the US, and we could develop a meaningful one there. And we could utilize a variety of our own local resources, including Mary Baldwin University, some historically Black churches, or, you know, any number of things. Stewart Hall could have students there, any sort of thing like that. So long story short, I'd like to advocate that we continue with our program, but that we maybe take a pause, and I'd be happy to lend all my services for free and start developing relationships within our city among all of our organizations, Rotary clubs, Kiwanis, churches, schools, just like we do in the 16 other towns in Virginia. So I don't have to make it up. I've got 16 good role models of all shapes and sizes. And that we develop a proper sister city program that would actually benefit the city and the community as much as we feel it benefits by just saying we have one. And that would lay the groundwork for Mr. Fox and the Stonewall Brigade Band to continue developing their own relationship, but in a much more sustainable context, so that the relationship is not just built on the fact that a guy played trombone really well, I think, and came over and then joined our band and is trying to get the bands together. I mean, it's a great start. It's a very good reason to do it. Many number of reasons could happen to cause a sister city, and I've outlined a lot of those. But it'd be great if it had even greater sustainability and had multiple connections. So, you know, this town that he's talking about, that he's lived in for 3 years, I think, he knows a lot about that town. Perhaps they have a Kiwanis club or a Rotary club or something like that. They have churches, I'm sure. You know, there's all kinds of ways that you can build connections between cities, in addition to the important thing that's getting it started, which is the music program. So that's about it for now. I could take some questions, or I could come back and have a longer session with Leslie or Kylie or Morgan or Amanda or any of you that want to. I live here now. I'm retired. I've got a lot of free time, so I'm available.
Sign them up.
That sounds like a great program.
It does.
Yeah.
I think we need to
Explore
do
it.
this. And what would you say our dues would be?
At the moment, as long as we keep our population below 25,000, which officially we are just below 25,000.
No, I don't think
We're
so.
above,
We're just
just
above,
above.
actually.
Are we just above?
Yeah.
Well,
So I looked
sister
it up. I think
cities-
it's like 600 something maybe for.
yeah,
it's not
the next
much
rung
more.
up is
Yeah.
about 610. You can see
Yeah.
what all those other cities are paying. I don't know. Sister Cities tends to use the Wikipedia number, which maybe is 2 years old or something, and that one showed below 25.
Yeah, Fredericksburg at 29,610.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, so we probably would be in that.
Winchester
That's what I
28,610.
Ms.
Yeah.
Berger, why don't
Sure.
you budget that in? I think we got a head nod from everybody up here on the dais. Why don't you budget that into the
Well,
2025?
and we'll be talking to Fred about next steps.
Absolutely,
So,
yeah. You
and-
get me for sure.
Okay.
You had me
I
here
wrote that
anyway, but now
down
you really get
like
me.
3 times.
Had you at hello?
And I love our town. I'm very involved here in a lot of ways, and I'll just do more, I promise, because I love it. So that's
Okay.
it.
So what do we have to do to get ready for May?
May.
Is it May or
well-
June?
When- in June.
June.
Mr. Fox has got that under control, I think, right? You're talking about the trip? Yeah, I can actually help with that if he needs my help in the capacity of Sister Cities. And, and then we could do some research about the town, and we could line up a couple other meetings while they're here or while they're there. You're going there, right?
We're going there.
Yeah, well, we could line up meetings over there, things that they could do that maybe they wouldn't have thought of, that could develop additional connections with our town. So it's not just on music. I mean, that would be the focus, and I don't want to distract you from that. That's important, but we could develop a much more sustainable relationship that way. Yeah.
Great.
And I could help with it because it's what I do. Yeah. Okay.
And I might add too, I'm Bruce Fox. And
Welcome.
we also have Kevin Haynes here, who is the musical director of the Stonewall Brigade Band. But I'm also the tour coordinator for the band's trip over to Gersthofen in this coming June. And they already have a official recognition or presentation set up for, I believe it's a Saturday, June 15th in the town of Gersthofen, where their mayor will be presenting the band with some kind of a documentation, just honoring the meeting. And they would like a representative, if we can make it happen, a representative from Staunton to be there also. So you could fight amongst yourselves as far as who's going to go. But
Is the trip paid for?
but if this actually happens, that is something that they would like to see. And they have met, in fact, they just met Tuesday on the same thing, and they have approved it on their end too.
So how many of you all are going over?
We have 44 people traveling.
Great.
Wonderful.
Well, if you don't get one of us, you're at least going to get a proclamation. Kelly, you better.
Yeah.
Maybe some swag to take it.
Oh, we can send
Absolutely.
swag.
Yes.
We're going to send some stuff with you.
I'm sorry, Mr. Fox, did you say how many folks came over when? the first
They had
time?
about, it was about 35.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So you're about an equal size.
Yeah. Yes.
All right.
And I actually did bring this is a book that they put together. This is the history of their band. Actually, I'm on the front cover here, but I can leave this with you if anybody wants more information on music
in
in their
German?
town. It is in German.
Ah.
There's a lot of pictures in
I
here.
hope you got
so-
pictures.
Yeah.
To read it.
A lot of photos. There's historical photos, current photos. There's a picture of the mayor with whom you'd be dealing with. And they would like to set up a video conference of some sort with their mayor and one of the representatives here as well. So, yes. Yeah, they would like to keep it kind of low profile. They were concerned about the budgetary items, required number of visits from the German side of sister cities. I forget what that organization is called in Germany. We mentioned it yesterday. Yeah. So, but Fred explained to me that we can join it here, and that would include Gersthofen as well. So we could be recognized on the US side as an official sister city partnership, but it wouldn't necessarily have to be that way in Germany. So,
Or we could just be a friendship city to start with.
right.
And then morph into a formal sister city.
Sounds good. Yes, we need to continue to explore this, and sounds like a wonderful partnership.
Okay. Well, I thank you for your time.
Thank you.
For yours. Yes.
Thank you, Fred. That was a wonderful presentation you put together since yesterday.
All right.
Can I leave this?
Leave this with Callie. All right. Thank you, gentlemen. And our next item on the agenda is a review of the water and sewer funds, rates, and capital projects. Ms. Beauregard.
Ms. Jessie Moyer, CFO, will present this item this evening.
Welcome.
Good evening. The PowerPoint that Kylie's going to bring up. Okay, so I thought it was important to get in front of you to talk about the health of our water and sewer fund ahead of the budget season, just so you can get some background on where we're at. So I'm going to start with the water fund. So our current water rate is based on 100 cubic feet, which is about 748 gallons, and it's 386. Down in the corner, you can see a comparison of our rate to other localities around us. The far right-hand column is 14 HCF. That's about what your typical family of 4 might use in a month. Our minimum bill is just 5 HCF, but usually a family of 4 is higher than that. And so you can see that our water is much cheaper than our neighbors. So the last time we raised our water rate was about 4 years ago. And during that time, inflation's been about 18.4%. So it's getting harder and harder to keep up with the operating cost and the capital cost. So some of the things affecting our operating expenses, the biggest is our water treatment plant. They are enforcing the Class 1 requirements, which has caused us to have to hire 5 new positions in the last few years. One was the full-time plant supervisor. If you remember in the FY24 budget process, we had to add 2 plant operators, and we have to add 2 more. And that should be about all the staff that we have to add there. And that's because we run the plant around the clock, and you have to have 2 staff on site all times. And I think one of them has to be a Class 1 operator. So the last time we raised our rates, our expenses for the water treatment plant was about $472,000. This year's budget, it would be $1.1 million. So that's a significant increase that we have to cover. So the wage and benefits there, that is for our water distribution. Those are the water lines that our crews work on. We have 3 positions on hold. That was done a few years ago to give a raise to the staff that were there because they were having trouble filling these positions anyway. I believe it was a $3 an hour increase that we did then. So our starting hourly rate for a operator 1 is $16.86 an hour. And so the reason we have trouble filling that is because it's hard work for $16.86 an hour when there are warehouse jobs that are climate controlled for $20 to $25 an hour. So these are the jobs that are in the ground, fixing the pipe, 2 a.m., cold weather. Worst case, it's sewer pipe. So it's not pleasant work. It's hard work. And it's just hard to remain competitive with the pay rates. Then of course, inflation for materials, supplies, construction, significant increases over the last few years. And depreciation, that's a non-cash item, but it's always good to budget depreciation to help build your fund balance up. We had to eliminate depreciation in FY24 to pay for our operating expenses. So the next slide talks about capital. And that first section up there should say water. I didn't catch it in time. So that's our Staunton Crossing water projects. Hopefully those will be grant funded if we're lucky. So the Richmond Avenue phase 1 construction is scheduled for 2026 at $2.5 million. And then we have a design and construction of phase 2 in 28, 29 for about almost $11 million combined. We have water tank work that needs to happen. Those have been pushed out a few fiscal years because of the fluoride tank that took priority this year. And so compared to last year's CIP, they've been pushed out to 25, 26, 27 for the 3 different tanks. And then we have the North River pipeline that is in our future. This is money that was put into the CIP this year for design of those projects. The construction costs are not in the 5-year plan, so you don't see those there. And then the other project that we have is the design of the Uniontown water extension scheduled for 27. What you're not seeing on here is the construction side of that. So that is something that we have to think about putting into our 5-year plan probably next year. So significant capital needs on the water side coming our way, not counting the North River Pipeline construction or the Uniontown construction part. So the major takeaways. We do have a nice fund balance, but not when you compare it to our future capital needs. Right now, we have about 6.5 million, and that was at the end of 2023. Since then, we got the Gardner Springs grant, which is going to help. We had budgeted to use quite a bit of fund balance this year. I think over $4 million, $4.5 million. We won't have to use that because of the Gardner Springs grant that we got. The capital needs that we're showing you, not including the crossing, is a little over 19 million. And then just for your reference, a 5% increase in the water rate would be $175,000.
What is a 5% increase in the water rate? I mean, all right, so you're talking at 386,
It's a 20 cents.
20 cents.
Yeah.
20 cents gets you 175,000.
And I think on a minimum bill, it's $1 every 2 months. It's a couple dollars for about 14 HCF, which is a typical family.
Waynesboro was at 430.
How do I go back, Kylie? Let's see. I don't remember. Waynesboro also has a few of those localities have flat service charges where we do not. We only charge the HCF rate. So they're at 438 plus a service charge of 1970.
20 cents would put us at 406.
Yeah.
So if you were to raise it $1, you'd get 5 times 175,000. So you get another million.
So what I'm struggling with is we have water needs, we have sewer needs, we have stormwater needs.
Right.
What is the right mixture
Right.
there for us and for our customers? So we don't really have recommendations on here. We're just kind of giving you information at this point.
Okay. In one of those charts that you showed me, we were the fourth, was that wastewater? We were the fourth lowest city in the entire state.
We are pretty low. Now, I keep my comparisons to those around us. And I eliminated some of the localities because they were either too big or too small. So another thing that I want to, go ahead.
When was the last time we raised any water?
4 years ago.
It was before this count.
Yes.
Another thing I want to talk to you about, just so that you know that it exists, is our facility fees. So according to city code, anytime somebody pays a facility fee, it can be used for capital expenditures that I've put it in bold and underlined there. We have not ever used any of our facility fees for capital projects. We take them, we set them aside in a separate fund balance, and they've accumulated for the water fund to $3.1 million. So that is available for whatever project you decide you would like to use it on. And that is in addition to the 6.5 million. So water fund is not as critical as what I'm going to get into as with the sewer fund. Let's just say that, even though there are bigger projects in our future with water. So the sewer fund is going to take on the same format. Our current rate is $4.88. The last time it was raised was 2012, 12 years ago. Inflation has increased about 34% according to the CPI calculator that I used, which would equate about $6.54 per HCF. I put the same comparison chart, but using the sewer rates for us and our surrounding localities. And you can see significantly for 14 HCF, we're about $68. Or the closest neighbor, Christiansburg, is 107. So significantly lower. Operating expenses here, we have one position on hold that we use to fund the increases. I believe we have a couple open positions because the same kind of work. It's hard to fill those operator one positions at $16.86 an hour when you're repairing sewage lines, all hours of the night or day. Inflation, same here. The supplies, the equipment, capital projects really increased lately. Depreciation was eliminated eliminating FY '24 in order to balance the budget. Sewer, I think, is worse off because the operating revenues are not covering the operating expenses and the debt service at this point. And it's very concerning, but that's before you even get to any capital expenditures. So the Middle River wastewater treatment plant, I went back to FY '13, which was the last time we increased the rates. And the annual cost there was $954,000. Their FY '25 budget is $2.2 million. Now, in that, there is a large clarifier number 3 project for, I think it was about 350,000, maybe 373. But if you back that out and the other capital, it's still a 65% increase in operating expenses. So just like for water, here are our sewer projects for the next 5 years, according to the plan. The crossing bids have come back high, so we have to decide what to do there. We either value engineer, we rebid, but they're significantly higher than what the grant is that we received last year. The Commerce Sewer Line is scheduled for design in '24, construction in '25. And then you see the Lewis Creek, that's the Commerce and Lewis Creek are about the same project, but as the way it was explained to me, Commerce Road doesn't continue where this line goes. So he calls it the Lewis Creek Sewer Line, which is 25, 26, 27, 28 for phase 3 and 4. And then we have the Cole Avenue project, which was added this year, and that's done in along with the Cole Avenue stream restoration. We have a Wayne Avenue sewer line replacement we need to do. And then there's the design of moving the sewer line that runs under the Staunton Steam Laundry. 2025, we have a New Hope Road, I&I mitigation and pump station. And then FY '27 is the design of the Uniontown sewer extension. And then we added a sewer line reserves because you just don't know what line might go bad that year. So that's just a plan for saving up for some of those. So that is our fund balance for the sewer fund balance, $2.1 million. Currently, for FY '24 capital, we have a $3 million shortfall. Majority of that is the crossing sewer. So we don't have enough fund balance to cover it at this point. And when I did the FY '25 sewer budget, there's a deficit of 1.683 just for that year. You can see the CIP needs for the 5-year outlook is they're less than what we saw in water. And a 5% increase on sewer is 190,000. So this is the facility fees for the sewer side. So that is a pretty healthy number, $4.5 million.
How much is the shortfall for the 3 million?
3 million, yes. So we could say that we're going to use that if we don't decide to rebid and put the water and sewer together at the crossing to try to get a better rate. So just wanted to let you know that this is here. It is accumulated. We have never touched it. And it is separate from what I'm showing you as the available fund balance. So we were wondering how much we would need to fully fund water and CIP projects. It's 18% increase per year, each of the next 5 years, which is not doable. So what is reasonable? We think a minimum increase for water is reasonable, using up some of the fund balance for the CIP the next few fiscal years. And then maybe when we get to 2029 and we have a larger Commerce Avenue, I think it's Commerce Avenue, we could issue debt for that larger project. And I believe we have some water debt falling off, but it's not until 2032. So sewer is going to require a larger increase just because it's not funding itself, its operations for one. And we have the large deficit to cover for the CIP. And that is all I had for tonight.
I don't know if you have this, but could you give us a dollar total of what sewer would require to meet its current needs? In other words, so it's not losing money every year. What will we have to, what would the minimum be to just get us to break even?
I think it's bigger than we could increase in 1 year.
Okay.
I think in order to stick with something that's going to be affordable for our customers, we really need to use those facility fees to bridge the gap in our
Okay.
CIP. I did the same kind of analysis with sewer, and you would have to increase 15% each year for 5 years, which it's just not
That's just
sustainable.
not, yeah, exactly.
But if we could get that $3 million covered with the facility fees, then we could do an increase and start working away and covering those operating expenses. I think that would get us to a good place.
Okay.
But it would take us such a large increase in FY '25. It's not feasible.
Well, thank you for your really uplifting message.
Yeah, I hate to be the bearer of bad news.
No, but it's good to know this, and we have to get this out. And I understand that when you don't raise a rate from 2013 until now, you're going to put yourself in a position like this. And we have to understand taxes are meant to be competitive and not to be ignored. I mean, we're providing services and we have to raise taxes, but we have to make sure that we're not doing so out of whack with our surrounding areas. So
Would have been nice to at least keep up with inflation.
yes,
Keep up with it.
exactly. But thank you for your report. Does anybody on council have any questions?
So one last slide
Okay.
is possible next steps. Once we decide what increase and what funds, because we also have to keep in mind stormwater, the presentation that was given to us a few months ago.
That one's not good either.
No, it's not. So it's gonna be some type of balancing act going on there. Introduction of the proposed ordinance would be March 28th with a public hearing on April 11th. And then it would be considered the same time as you consider your budget and the CIP on April 25th. So any other questions?
You've done it to us again. We,
Find the money, Jesse.
I was dreading this. I don't like to be the
No.
bearer of bad news, but I also want our water funds and sewer funds to survive and be
Correct,
healthy.
correct. It's the necessary report and I thank you for it.
Thank you,
Okay.
Jesse.
And I believe at this point, we're going into a closed meeting. Would someone care to read the motion?
Mayor Claffey, I move to enter a closed meeting for one, the discussion of the performance of a specific council-appointed city employee, the Stanton City Manager pursuant to Virginia Code, Section 2.2-3711A1, and two, consultation with legal counsel about specific legal matters related to the First Amendment of the United States Constitution pursuant to Virginia Code, Section 2.2-3711A8.
Thank you. A motion has been made. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Custer, could you call the roll, please?
Ms. Woods,
Aye.
Ms. Edwards,
Aye.
Mr. Robertson,
Aye.
Mr. Campbell,
Aye.
Mr. Arrowood,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Darby,
Aye.
Mayor Claffey.
Aye.
Motion carries.
And we will return at 7 o'clock. Good evening. It's 7 o'clock. Want to welcome everyone to tonight's meeting. Would y'all please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance?
We gotta reconvene.
Oh, we do. Hold on. Yeah. All right, here's Mark.
I'm on it.
Way to go there. Counselor Woods, could you please read the motion to
Mayor
reconvene?
Claffey. I move that council reconvene in an open meeting and certify to the best of each member's knowledge that only lawfully exempted public business matters were discussed and that only public business matters as identified in the closed meeting motion were heard, discussed, or considered in the meeting.
Thank you. A motion has been made. Is there a second?
Second?
Second by Counselor Edwards. Mr. Kester, please call a roll.
Mr. Robertson,
Aye.
Mr. Campbell. Aye. Ms. Woods,
Aye.
Mr. Arrowood,
Aye.
Ms. Edwards,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Darby,
Aye.
Mayor Claffey.
Aye.
Motion carries.
And now, would you all please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Absolutely.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And tonight's invocation moments of silence will be brought to us by Counselor Edwards.
Thank you, Mayor Claffey. This evening, I would like to express a few words of gratitude. I want to thank all the people of Staunton, those who keep it clean and beautiful, for the police, sheriffs, firefighters, and EMTs who keep us safe, for the cooks, waiters, and waitresses who feed us. I'm grateful for the people who stock shelves and sell groceries, for drivers and small business owners. I'm grateful for home builders, bankers, stay-at-home parents, realtors, journalists, fast food workers, teachers, professors, and daycare providers. I want to thank the leaders of religious congregations, judges, attorneys, volunteers, and all city workers. I recognize and value people who can't work or who can't find work, and those who are retired. I offer thanks to caregivers of the elderly and to social service providers. I'm grateful for the sellers of flowers, donuts, gas, and beer, for people who fix cars, deliver the mail, and especially for people who clean bathrooms, storerooms, showrooms, and classrooms, and for all the thousands of people I've missed. Lord God, in this spirit of gratitude, I pray that you rest on and guide this council as we make decisions on behalf of the fine people of Staunton. I pray you give us unity of spirit as we work together in our mission to make this wonderful community even better for every single person who calls it home. Thank you in his holy name. Amen.
Amen. Very nice. And for the mayor's report, I'm going to stick with that very mood. And I'm going to read a message I got this Tuesday evening. And it says, a quick note of kudos to Staunton's utility department. Our water was off. I called the utility department. The guy said there was a main break being worked on in College Park. A short while later, another employee called me back and said, water's back on. And by the way, you might run some water in your bathtub first to get the air out of the pipes. Fantastic customer service. Thanks for all you do and the staff in the city. So
Wow. Well done. Love it.
it's wonderful to get those type
Attitude of
messages and
gratitude,
not the
yeah.
other type. So it's great. We live in a great city. It's been a quick week. Went to EDA this morning and want to thank our new publicity chair, Josh Knight, and he was attended and we gave him lots of good ideas, but he doesn't need our good ideas that we were giving him because he is getting some wonderful publication of what's going on in the city out. And everybody was talking about that at this morning's meeting, how the word's getting out and we are building, we are moving forward. We're doing some great things in the city. So thank you, Josh, for all your work and we appreciate you being on board staff. That's all I have. Does anyone else on council have any members?
Yeah, I just want to keep in the same line with gratitude. I just want to, on behalf of the Staunton Augusta County African American Research Society, I would like to thank the city and Josh for highlighting this month because this month was as noted as Black History Month. And because we continue to use this display here in City Hall to not just Black History Month, but we do it, we've been doing it now for going on 4 years, preserving and displaying local Black history in our community. And it was highlighted through the city, and we also do it at the Staunton Public Library. So thank you all for acknowledging and sharing that with all the city on your website. Thank you.
I'll say something.
Go ahead.
Just kind of staying in the same vein as Alice did. Want to make sure that our citizens know. I don't want to get the cart before the horse, but if anybody's been following House Bill 136 involving Uniontown, it did pass the House of Representatives 99-0. Yesterday, I believe it passed the Senate 39 or 40-0. So it's now awaiting the governor's signature.
Good deal.
Awful excited about that. Yep, it is. Absolutely. That's all I've got right now.
Anything else, members of council?
May I recognize two members of the school board here?
Please.
I would like to recognize two members of our school board. There may be more, but I see Chairwoman Natasha McCurdy and Mr. Bob Boyle over there, and I want to thank you for being here. And I just want to point out two things that the school board and the superintendent that they're working on. And I think it's something that's very important, and I want you all to know about it. We all know that there's an huge opioid crisis. And the schools are getting in front of that. And so in order to get in front of that, they're doing a lot of education now for students and families. They are having, from what I understand from the meetings, they're having a themed presentation each month so that kids know the dangers of what they might be putting in their mouth and their bodies to avoid a tragedy, to be proactive before something, a tragedy could occur here in our city. And I really appreciate they're doing that. It's a very sensitive subject, but it's, many of us have been touched by overdose deaths, and I'm grateful to them for doing that. So thank you very much, Mayor.
And I just want to keep on the same note. So the Staunton City Schools has asked me to come and be one of the speakers for Substance Awareness Month. And it's this month, but I will be speaking with the 3 classes on March the 8th.
Okay. Very good.
One other thing, I don't know how I could forget that. Attended actually a couple nights ago, attended Capsol meeting. And we will be meeting in the coming months to decide exactly which organizations are going to be doled out money to. This year we had almost $600,000 in requests. Right now we have, through some good donations, we have a little over 400,000 to actually divide up. And the fund, or the amount that was set, is that each organization that is approved will be receiving $35,000.
Wow.
So really excited and happy about that. So like I said, those particular organizations will be decided soon in the coming meetings. So.
Anything else? We got talkative all of
I
a
know.
sudden. Yeah. All right. This brings up the consent agenda. Procedure memorandum number 14 is the policy of city council to have routine, non-controversial items placed on a consent agenda. Tonight's consent agenda includes the approval of minutes from the work session, regular meeting, and the special meeting of the retreat from February 9th. A resolution reestablishing staggered terms for the Staunton Board of Equalization, a consideration of transfer of already appropriated funds to the CIP fund, and a consideration of application for Virginia Department of Criminal Justice Services School Resource Officers Incentive Grant Program, and a consideration of a proclamation to be presented in a March meeting. Now, does any member of council wish to discuss any of these matters at length and pull it off the consent agenda? And at this time, I will accept a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Mayor Claffey, I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Motion has been made. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Counselor Woods. Mr. Kester, please call the roll.
Mr. Arrowood,
Aye.
Mr. Campbell. Aye. Mr. Robertson,
Aye.
Ms. Woods,
Aye.
Ms. Edwards.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Darby,
Aye.
Mayor Claffey.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. And that took care of 5 items of business. Next item is the discussion and consideration of a resolution requesting the Virginia General Assembly and Governor Youngkin adopt a statute authorizing localities to conduct a referendum on an additional 1% sales tax to be used for school construction or renovation projects.
Blair, we'll take care of this item.
Very
Good evening, Mayor Claffey and
Welcome.
council. Thank you. At your January 25th work session with the Staunton School Board, there was a discussion about legislation this General Assembly session that would that would allow localities to enact up to an additional 1 cent sales tax. And this would be done per the legislation at the request of a governing body. There would be a referendum. The referendum would be up to 1 penny added to the sales tax. Those revenues would go towards capital projects for the schools. I want to go through just very briefly kind of what's going on. There were 2 bills. There were a number of bills by a number of legislators in both chambers. They were both consolidated. HB 805 passed the House and SB 14 passed the Senate. As you may know, February 13th is the crossover day. So that's the halfway point. These bills went to the respective chamber. Now, went to the other respective chamber. Now, what I wanted to, and I wrote that briefing for you last week so that it would be in your packet. The bills were very similar when they crossed over. Yesterday, February the 21st, the House made an amendment called a substitute to Senate Bill 14. And both HB 805 and Senate Bill 14 both stated that localities could set an expiration date for the sales tax. Yesterday, and I don't know why, the House Finance Committee passed on a 13-8 vote an amendment to SB 14 that eliminates the expiration date on the sales tax. So here's how that works. Let's say the entire House passes it. Let's say the Senate doesn't make the same change. Then they would go to a conference committee to try to come up with a bill that would go back to both chambers. Whether it had the expiration date or not, I don't know. Now, if the Senate ultimately amends House Bill 805 to have an expiration date, there wouldn't be a conference committee. If they pass both houses, they'd go to the governor for signature. But before you, if you wish, there's a resolution. There had been some desire expressed at that work session about considering a resolution asking legislators and the governor to enact this authority that would give the locality the ability to levy up to a 1 cent sales tax if it's passed by the referendum. So there's a resolution before you that would support that proposition. Again, that's for your consideration only.
Mr. Blair, could you please explain to us what a resolution does? If we were
Sure.
to sign something like that and send it? to
Well,
Richmond,
the
what-
resolution, yes, it would go to, per the terms,
Mhm.
to Delegate Campbell,
Mhm.
Senator Head, and Governor Youngkin's office. As you know, they are the representatives of the city of Staunton in the General Assembly, and the governor ultimately has to sign or veto legislation. If he vetoes it, it would go back to both houses. They can override with 2/3 vote of each chamber. But since the reason it would go to those three, it would express the will of council to support this 1 cent sales tax increase option for localities. But again, I do want to make you aware, since I wrote that briefing, there has been an amendment that was introduced in the House yesterday that strips out an expiration date for the tax. Both versions had the expiration date when I wrote the briefing, but since then, the House Finance Committee considered it yesterday and made this amendment.
So what does the expiration date? That means it gives it an expiration in when.
Right. So let's say theoretically that the bills passed and there was an expiration date provision. The original SB 14 and HB 805. And let's say council said we'd like to do the referendum. The referendum, as it was until the House amendment yesterday, you would have had to have set a date for this tax to expire. Now you could set that just any date, or if you had particular bond project, you could have it expire when the bonds were paid off. But again, yesterday, the House stripped the expiration date out. So if the House version that's currently passes House Finance is adopted by the whole House and ultimately both chambers adopted it, effectively the tax would be permanent if adopted by the voters in a referendum. It would not expire.
Mr. Blair, does the referendum, is the cost associated with a referendum, is that something that falls on the localities to
Yes.
put the bill for?
Mr. Blair, do you have any idea how much it cost the city would face if we were to add a referendum on our ballot?
I do not. I do
Okay.
not. Here's what I would say. If you held it in November, I mean, there's typically a general election. You would have to ultimately, our office would file something with the clerk of court to get it on the ballot. I don't know that there would be additional cost. You know, we talked about the special election, I think was
19,000.
Yeah, $19,000, but I don't know that there wouldn't be any additional cost, but I don't think it would be 19,000 because that required us to mobilize the entire machinery for one election.
This would require just adjusting the ballot.
The ballot,
Yeah.
right. So I don't know what cost that, would be, if any.
And a resolution does not require a unanimous vote of the city council.
No, ma'am.
I like the idea of, I don't like the idea of sending something that isn't
That
necessary.
isn't necessarily law yet.
Yeah, so Mr. Mayor, could you please explain, is there an ideal time that a resolution is sent? Because,
I mean,
Mayor
we're,
Claffey was
well-
talking about the timing and
we're shooting at a moving target and the bills are changing day by day and we don't really know what the ultimate bill is going to read. And once the bill is set in Richmond, then it is our responsibility as constitutional officers to enforce the law of Virginia. So regardless what we say here today, if it is in contradiction to what is decided in Richmond, we have to go to
Right.
Richmond's, we have to bow down to Richmond's rules and regulations anyway. So I'm not convinced that taking a stand in the, drawing a line in the sand or whatever you want to say, today is of any long-term benefit until we know what Richmond's gonna do. And we're pretty, it's their decision and we're gonna have to follow what they state, correct?
Yes, yes, this is a resolution that would express your support for the particular proposition, but it is not law. It's the council's expression of its opinion about what's pending.
And yeah, I think I asked a question earlier to other council members. Is it more just sort of a symbolic request that, because particularly, and I say this because, I mean, personally, I've said this before, I support the school boards having the ability to levy taxes for themselves so that they can have the ability to renovate and construct new buildings. So that we are not faced with that burden, because we saw earlier, you know, the water needs and the sewer needs and the multiple infrastructure needs that we have to deal with in our city budget. And the way it was explained to me and the way I've read it, it seemed it was a fair and equitable way of raising funds. And I also liked it because it gives the locality the choice. It's not us saying that Stantonians are going to be now paying a 1% tax. And it also sends it to the people in a referendum. So I just wanted to express my support for it, and I hope I'm understanding it correctly. And I would, yeah.
Yeah, so is this just supporting the referendum? That
No.
means we're saying that we support a referendum to be presented for the tax.
We would support the idea of them being able to do a referendum.
Yeah.
As this is being discussed.
Yeah, so that's what we were in support of, right?
Right.
It's not
Current-
saying that we were in support of the 1 cent tax, because if we were in support, but it leaves it up to the citizens to say whether they want that or not.
Can I throw out an idea? Yeah, but can I just make a motion that we simply table this until we know what Richmond's going to do and then take a vote on it? Yea or nay?
That
But
makes
I think
sense.
there's a bigger picture here that
Yeah.
we're not, this and the next item, we're considering a resolution of support to the state to allow a transfer of authority to a local level as opposed to waiting for the state to tell us what to do. I think that's what these both should be viewed as, not waiting for the law, but that we support the idea of more authority being transferred to the local level where our citizens can have
Yeah,
input
they might say
to make
no.
a decision to that potentially benefits their community.
And the character of this one does not seem to be changing. I mean, this is about doing a referendum up to 1 cent on that. The only thing that seems to have been in discussion is whether an expiration date gets tied to it. So that doesn't really fundamentally change it on that. So I do completely support this as well, on that. And I would like to tell Richmond, if
What do you
this
wanna tell
council
Richmond?
feels that. Well, I think it's good for localities to express support for things going through in a timely manner. So, because I mean, we did just have a representative come in and tell us, thanks, it's just too late for some other things we wanted to have going through. So, I mean, if we support this, I think we should go ahead and let them know. This puts it directly in the hand of the voters to directly fund school projects.
Right,
on
and that is in the hands of the voters. It would be in the hands of the voters. So yeah, I support this. Yeah, I support this, and also I support the 1% tax. But we are voting to let us, the localities, be able to decide that. So that's what
That we support it.
That we support
support
it.
the idea.
the idea of the localities.
Yes.
What we're talking about is a resolution.
Voting.
though.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
I got it.
All right. Yeah,
I understand.
I understand what you're saying, and I can vote. I can vote in favor of letting the citizens of Stanton
Yeah.
decide it.
Yeah.
I'm gonna tell you point blank, I ain't in favor of increasing tax. Not right now. I'm not in favor of a taxation increase on the citizens of Stanton. That's that's me. But yes, I'm in favor of letting the citizens make a
Determine that.
decision and determine their own fate.
That could very well be the majority of the citizens agree with you,
Right.
or they
That's
want
right.
to push
Right.
the schools.
Yeah.
On that,
Yeah.
but I mean, but it puts it directly,
Right.
directly in their hands. So
Instead of letting Richmond say, yeah, we're gonna do this, and then we don't agree with it. I mean, this is support to let the
Regardless, I guess, of
people
what it is.
decide. Yeah,
I like local, I like.
I like to go forward
Yeah,
with the
direct
resolution.
democracy on it, I think is
Yeah.
great.
I guess I'm still going back to this resolution and what does the resolution mean? And, you know,
Just a formal way of us communicating
Same.
with them. that
Right,
that's what
right.
we wanna
Stanton's
do.
for it.
and I don't, yeah, you know, do we say that Stanton City Council supports it if not everyone on city council supports it? Is where I'm also heading. And so.
Oh, I mean, no, I
um,
support the idea.
I
yeah.
support
Yeah.
the
I just,
referendum.
yeah.
I just don't support this, the 1 cent tax.
Oh,
but-
yeah, right.
But I agree with the citizens
To
deciding.
conduct,
Making
The
to conduct the
referendum.
referendum.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, of course.
So can I make a motion?
Democracy and it's fine.
No, Council Robertson, do you want to?
I'll withdraw.
Withdraw, yes.
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay.
Now, if you want to make your motion.
Okay, so now I can make the motion?
Absolutely.
Okay. So, Mayor Claffey, I move that council adopt a resolution requesting the Virginia General Assembly and Governor Youngkin adopt a statute authorizing localities to conduct a referendum on an additional 1% sales tax to be used for school construction or renovation projects.
Motion has been made. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second. Mr. Kester, could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Robertson,
Aye.
Ms. Woods,
Aye.
Ms. Edwards,
I,
Mr. Arrowood. Aye. Mr. Campbell,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Darby,
Aye.
Mayor Claffey.
Aye.
Motion carries.
All right. And now it brings us to item C, which is a resolution requesting the Virginia General Assembly and Governor Youngkin provide localities with the authority to permit or deny the placement of electronic gaming devices within the locality. Mr. Blair.
So taxes and gambling in one night.
Not at all, then we.
I
Yeah.
don't think it's gonna surprise us.
Um,
so.
But so again, and this is to Mayor Claffey's earlier point. I wrote these briefings again last week so they could be in your packet. As you are aware, I'll just briefly go through this. The skill games started to pop up in places of public business years ago, different permutations. I don't know if Stanton ever had one. At one time, there were internet cafes that had machines similar to what you see in the gas station now, but they weren't quite that. But now, if you go in, I'm sure you've seen these in the past few years. If you go in certain gas stations in Virginia, there are what are called electronic gaming devices is the legal term. Skill games is really what people call them. But effectively, in 2020, Governor Northam signed legislation that because they had always, they are also sort of colloquially, there was a term called gray games because they were in a gray area of law. Some people said they were slot machines. Owners and proprietors, and a few people, there's a YouTuber out there that's gained some fame saying, no, you can have skill and beat the game every time. Yeah, it's funny if you read some of this YouTuber is out there, and again, I won't give him any publicity, but he's out there and he goes through how you beat skill games in Virginia. But anyway, they were known as gray games because, again, were they gambling? Were they not gambling? There were AG's opinions that came out about this. But ultimately, in 2020, Governor Northam signed legislation that they would be banned in 2021. They wanted to give people time to transition. There was a lawsuit brought down in Greenville County, Virginia. The circuit court judge there issued an injunction, said the law couldn't go into effect statewide. That injunction stayed in effect until last fall, and the Supreme Court dissolved the injunction. And effectively, that law in 2020 that Governor Northam signed was now effective. As you know, our local law enforcement officials, as well as law enforcement officials across the state, gave a grace period, so to speak, between that order the Attorney General first came out and gave a couple months, but then our law enforcement officials, as well as many across the state, I think set January as when they would start enforcing this ban. In the meantime, the folks who, a lot of, they're small business owners, folks who own gas stations and the like, worked with a bipartisan group of legislators. They'd like to quote unquote re-legalize these skill games. So there's been legislation in the Senate and House to re-legalize these skill games. When I wrote this, again, to Mayor Claffey's point, and just like the sales tax, they crossed over February 13th. The bill that I had referenced in that briefing from the House Bill 590, had language that said skill games, if they were going to be present in a locality, either the governing body had to adopt an ordinance, or you could send it to the voters for a referendum. And if a majority of people in a referendum said we want skill games in the locality, then they could go. Senate bill did not have that authority for localities. The Senate bill, they have a licensing group that's going to license certain amount of providers, and they'll have a license for so many machines, and they can put those machines in Virginia. I'm paraphrasing and making it and filtering it down a bit, but that's effectively, it's more state regulation. You get your license from the state, localities have no say. Since the House bill has crossed over, guess what? The Senate has stripped that out, and they're putting back in their language, which takes away local authority. It would just be a state licensing. I don't think the House has acted on the Senate bill yet. I try to check the legislative information services once a day and try to check on local bills affecting us, but I can't see where the House has acted yet on the Senate bill. But before you is a resolution, and what the resolution states is this: it does not take a position on whether you favor skill games or not. It just says that if there is legislation that effectively re-legalizes skill games, you prefer language that gives localities the option to determine if skill games will be present in the locality, either through an ordinance or referendum. It's not, again, I want to make it clear, I wrote it, it's not a position on the games themselves. You may favor them or not, or think people should do them or not, but it's clear, this is a resolution to our representatives and the governor asking them to give localities the authority to allow the skill games or not.
Questions from council?
I think this is an easier decision than the one we just considered.
This one doesn't have tax dollars.
I know, right?
I think so too.
I entertain a motion.
Mayor Claffey, I move that council adopt the resolution requesting the General Assembly and Governor Youngkin to provide localities with authority to permit or deny the placement of electronic gaming devices within the locality.
Motion's been made. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Counselor Robertson. Mr. Kester, please call the roll.
Mr. Campbell,
Aye.
Ms. Edwards,
Aye.
Ms. Woods,
Aye.
Mr. Robertson.
Aye.
Mr. Arrowood.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Darby,
Aye.
Mayor Claffey.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
I've got one last one on firearms.
You're going for all of them tonight.
John. We need to enter into a closed session to discuss an employee.
Yeah.
Staffing issue.
Did you hear that, John?
I like that. All right, next on the agenda is an update on the Virginia Department of Transportation projects. Ms. Beauregard.
Okay, I have Lyle Hart here. He's our city engineer, and we have numerous VDOT projects coming up before us in the now and in the very near future. So we thought it would be a great idea to start putting these in front of everybody, and we'll continue to remind folks about these. And some will be more disruptive than others, or at least inconvenient for people. So Mr. Hart's going to walk through that with you this evening. And again, we're going to continue these updates as we go along the next several years, it seems, for a while now. So, all right. I'll let
You can
Mr.
tell us
Hart-
all about Edgewood sidewalk?
That'll be included. You'll just have to hang on. It's toward the end.
That's towards the end. It's towards the end. So.
Welcome. Good to have you here tonight.
Thanks, Leslie and Mayor, and good evening, City Council. So as Leslie mentioned, I want to take a few minutes to provide a relatively brief overview and an update of the multiple VDOT projects that are currently underway or are about to be underway here in the city of Staunton. And they total over $30 million of VDOT funding. So I'm going to focus on the portion of the projects that are indeed being funded by VDOT. Going to mention that these projects are typically, they begin as a funding application, usually by the city or possibly by like the Planning District Commission. And some of the exhibits that you'll see are actually were included in those applications, and that's where they're from. So once awarded, a project schedule will be set by VDOT, and it usually will run through like a 6-year cycle. So it takes time for it to come to fruition. And then, of course, sometimes during that time, the schedule can change, or if budget needs to change, whatever, sometimes things need to adapt. And so I want to go ahead and again, give sort of a one-stop shop, if you will, in this time tonight, just so you can see all at once what we have going on with VDOT projects. And they're listed on the screen. I'm just going to go through them, excuse me, one at a time. And the first is a Crossing Way extension. This is a VDOT administered project. And I'm sure you guys are pretty familiar with this because you can see it, it's going on. It's currently under construction. It is approximately a 3/4 mile new road that connects the Crossing Way just north of the existing roundabout. It'll connect to Valley Center Drive out by Western State Hospital, going through the Staunton Crossing property. It's, as I mentioned, it's currently under construction and is scheduled to be completed this spring. And so, again, there's approximately $10 million total of VDOT funding that was invested into this project. The next project I want to talk about is SGR repaving, or SGR stands for State of Good Repair. And this is a locally administered project or projects, really. And the SGR projects, it's a way for the VDOT provides to use federal funding to allow localities to use this funding to repave certain streets that are in need of some good repairs. So State of Good Repair projects. So in this case, we have 5 separate project areas, SGR project areas. And going just from west to east, we have 2 sections on West Beverly. One is from the western city limits to Grubert Avenue. The next section just continues on from Grubert Avenue to the intersection with West Frederick Street. We have in magenta there, a block of North Jefferson Street from Beverly to Frederick, and then West Frederick Street from that intersection with Jefferson over almost all the way to Lewis Street. We have a pretty good section of New Street from Johnson Street on up to Sunnyside near Churchville Avenue. And then further east, we have almost a mile-long section of New Hope Road. Now, I'll mention that in the past, we've had SGR funding for repaving projects, and they were considerably simpler to administer because they were done, they only involved repaving. However, now there's more federal oversight involved. And so for the repaving projects, they incorporate upgrades to adjacent sidewalks that allow or ADA compliance where that is feasible. So of the 5 areas here, New Hope Road does not have any sidewalks adjacent to it. So it is purely a repaving project. The other 4 project areas do have some sidewalk ADA ramp improvements. And These are shown here in the different locations. Again, there's 18 different intersections that will be affected with the ADA improvements. As has been mentioned before at city council meetings, in addition to the intersection improvements, there's also included in the project plans that's being bid for this, a new 600 linear foot section of HUD-funded sidewalk, which is along West Beverly Street near Morris Mill Road. And while this is not funded by VDOT, it's being included in the bid package because it has similar work. It's sidewalk. Of course, it's right alongside the section of West Beverly that's going to be repaved with the SGR project from VDOT. And being HUD funded, it also has similar contractual requirements for the VDOT work, such as Davis-Bacon Act and federal contract language. And so just wanted to clarify that's included in the project plans and the bid package, but it's not part of the VDOT funding. So of course, when streets get repaved, can't just be left with blank pavement. And typically the default is to replace the pavement with there's in-kind restriping. And however, after consulting with the planning staff, we considered that, hey, let's take advantage of this opportunity. Let's go ahead and provide markings and signage for a bike plan along West Beverly Street. And I think you guys had heard about this in a previous council meeting. Because basically we'll have a blank slate of pavement. So let's go ahead and mark it up according to a bike plan that we had Timmons Group develop for us. And so after it's repaved, it'll have some improvements, primarily with the markings and some signage. The status of this project is it's currently out to bid. The anticipated NTP or notice to proceed for construction is this spring. And we are finding that it's a challenging time because there's a lot of work out there, but hopefully we'll have some good bids in. And the total VDOT funding is shown here. Again, just the VDOT funding for the SGR State of Good Repair projects is 1.73 million. And this does not include the HUD funding or the additional local funds that will be needed to make this project happen. Next, we have the Richmond Avenue.
Excuse me, Lyle, can I ask a question on the, given the nature of the New Hope Road repaving, as you said, that's the more rural.
Yes.
Is there opportunities with the State of Good Repair to do some minor shoulder widening to make that?
It's not in the scope of this. It's primarily
Replacement in kind.
just replacement kind. That's correct. So next we have the Richmond Avenue Crossing Way shared use path. And this is a VDOT administered project. It's approximately half mile of proposed 10-foot shared use path. It's anticipated to be along the south side of Richmond Avenue. And it goes from Frontier Drive, and then it'll go up Crossing Way almost to the existing roundabout to existing sidewalk there. And it also includes the pedestrian crossings at the affected intersection. And it is currently in a design phase. Here's a roll plot of the progress so far by VDOT as they're administering this. And the anticipated notice to proceed to construction will be in the fall of 2026 with approximately $4.8 million of VDOT funding towards it. We have the Commerce Road Lewis Creek Greenway, which is another VDOT administered project. And this project will have a 10-foot shared use path, paved path along approximately 3/4 mile of Commerce Road. It goes from downtown on up to Statler Boulevard. This will primarily be repurposing the right southbound lane of Commerce Road. Here's a sketch from the funding application that was submitted. And the layout's being considered, obviously it's called a greenway. The idea is to get close to the creek is be more of a greenway. The challenge VDOT's finding is being able to get down there without adding fill to the floodplain area, because then that could potentially change the flood elevations, which is what we're trying to avoid. So this project is currently in design, and the notice to proceed is anticipated for the fall of 2025. The funding is just under $5 million VDOT for this project. Next, we have actually two projects that I'm going to talk about together: the Richmond Avenue Road Diet and Roundabout, and also the Greenville Avenue Road Diet project. These are both VDOT administered. And here is both of them. The Richmond Avenue Road Diet shown in magenta on the screen. To quote the application for the funding application for it, the overall vision for this segment creates an urban boulevard with a roundabout, shared use path and sidewalk, and landscaping with an urban form. It goes about 1/3 of a mile along Richmond Avenue, basically from the watering can on up pretty much to the top of the hill as you head east on Richmond Avenue. This will include significant pedestrian and safety improvements for crossing Greenville Avenue in front of the villages and provide access to downtown. And here's a sketch from the funding application. And this information is available online at VDOT's website. It's, again, you can see where it goes along Richmond Avenue. Of course, the big deal portion of this is the roundabout, which I selfishly look forward to literally every day on my way to work when I won't have to stop at that light. So and then it'll be abut the Greenville Avenue Road Diet to the south. So moving on to the Greenville Avenue Road Diet, this is the sketch included in that funding application. It's repurposing approximately 2/3 of a mile section of Greenville Avenue, and it'll extend from Richmond Avenue area, project area, and it'll continue south up to Ritchie Boulevard. The project scope does not include all of that intersection. And essentially it'll be reducing this section of Greenville Avenue from 5 lanes to 3. They'll have bike lanes along both sides, provide some median closures at intermittent locations, as well as a southbound right turn lane onto Hampton Street. So as you can imagine, and as Leslie alluded to, while this project, the completion of the project will be very impactful, very positively impactful, as you can imagine, the construction is also going to be impactful and maybe disruptive and challenging. And so this is the intersection of our two major arterials, Route 11 and 250, right at the crosshairs, if you will, in Staunton, at the transition to downtown. So it's important that the planning, the designing, and the coordinating of these two projects, it's going to be very critical. So these were applied for and they were awarded as two separately funded projects. However, VDOT's plan is that they will be delivered as one project. And so they will be combined or effectively bundled together. And the reasons this will allow for the coordination, both of the design and especially the construction of the two areas, as I mentioned, and also hopefully provide some economy of scale. And it'll also, the intent is to also provide some flexibility for how the funds can be appropriated between the two projects. And then hopefully again to decrease the total amount of time that everything, just when we finish one project and start another, certainly they'll have to be sequenced accordingly because there will be disruptions to traffic and such, but having them bundled like this will allow for greater ability to coordinate and sequence and have control over that. And again, VDOT is administering that. And there is another aspect of this project that I want to mention, and it involves our desire to dig only once, and that's that it includes a water line replacement. Now, this is the first phase of our Richmond Avenue water line replacement project. The additional phase goes from on further east, and it's longer, and that'll come later. But the intent is we need to get new water pipes in the ground before VDOT work is done over top of it. And even in the time I've been here with the city, we've had a few water main breaks in these locations. And certainly we don't want another one to come and wash out the construction zone or the finished product of these projects. So just to clarify, the city is going to be paying both for the design and the ultimate construction of the water line. But VDOT is going to incorporate the waterline design into their plans and into their bid package. And so they will also administer the construction of it with the road diet projects. And this will help, again, further coordinate in design the location of the water line to make sure it's not going to interfere with the road diet projects, and also hopefully provide some economy of scale, and really it just keeps with our principle of dig only once and to minimize the length of time we have Richmond Avenue open for construction.
Lyle, since this project is probably going to be the most disruptive, what kind of timeline is VDOT thinking start to finish? How long is, all this going to be creating chaos?
Great question. Currently, again, still early on in design stage, they're anticipating 2-year construction. Now, again, that's going to be it has to be sequenced because you can't just obviously shut it all down at once or have construction all at once. And so that's something that'll have to be carefully worked out in the sequencing the design.
Another quick question. $5 million for this project, $5 million for whatever. Then you talked about VDOT wanting to specifically do both of them at the same time, which you said could create an economy. Doing it that way, will that, instead of, let's say, cost 10 million combined or each, maybe cost 8.5, 9 million, or 9.5, and then that way maybe free up some of that extra money we could do more with? Does that make sense?
It does, and that is the hope, that combined will create an economy of scale. As you can see here, the funding that VDOT has allocated here is just under 6 million for both of these projects. And so there is concern that it'll be a pretty tight budget for what they want to do. Again, a lot of it is repurposing of existing asphalt and right of way, but there's still a lot of expense with that, particularly with the roundabout. And so this way it'll be, by bundling it, it will help it to be, I guess, more holistic look at it instead of something being done separately over here for this project and a different office working separately on another project. And it's expected to notice proceed to construction in the winter of 26-27. And to Mayor Claffey's request, Edgewood Road and North Augusta sidewalks. Now, these are locally administered projects. These were applied for and awarded as 3 separate projects. I'm going to talk about them all together because they're fairly close in proximity to one another. They're new sidewalks and pedestrian improvements and at the intersections that they'll go through. Most of the intersections, particularly North Augusta, are unsignalized intersections. Along Edgewood, it's about roughly a quarter mile. It goes from the end of the existing sidewalk just west of Coulter Street. I don't know if you can see the yellow line on there from funding application, but extends further west up to Augusta Street. Further north is the southern section of the North Augusta sidewalk. It's about a half mile. It goes from Lambert Street to the Terry Court Shopping Center. And then the third project area is about a half mile of new sidewalk that'll go from the Terry Court Shopping Center on up to Meadowbrook Road and also on up to Baldwin Place is how it's proposed. Now, I should mention that VDOT's schedule set to begin the design this current fiscal year. And as the time of design drew near, they called a meeting and said, hey, we're concerned that the allotted funds for these projects may not be enough to do all 3 projects. And so what the plan is to phase the design so that starting with Edgewood Road, as we get into design, we can do a cost estimate, a more detailed cost estimate, and provide early on in the design phase some guidance and direction is, hey, how much is Edgewood going to cost based on current market conditions and expectations, and and as well as the design that's currently, along, and how much we're going to have for the other two projects. And once we know that, we'll be able to better be informed of how to proceed. And so we'll be working closely with VDOT on that. So we are currently in the early design phase still, and notice to proceed is anticipated for spring 2026, but that would be for Edgewood, yet to be determined for the other two areas. The total funding for all three projects from VDOT is at $3.63 million. And the last project I'm going to mention is more of a program. In fact, it's called the HSIP Virginia, or the Highway Safety Improvements Program. And we applied for this recently this past year, and were awarded approximately a little over $1 million for primarily crosswalk improvements. And these are throughout various areas, primarily downtown. I know Public Works has been working with VDOT on this. It's still really in the kind of the pre-scoping phase early on, but it'll have various improvements at multiple intersections, have high visibility crosswalks, ped heads, pedestrian signal heads, unsignalized intersection improvements, and then also APS, which are interfaces for those who are hearing or visually impaired for pedestrian crosswalks. You can see some of the the intersections mentioned there that most of these were included in the STARS study. And so again, still early on with anticipated notice to proceed in the fall of 2027. So here's kind of the nutshell of the projects I just mentioned, summarized, and appreciate you allowing me to present all at once and taking the time this evening.
10 of us, one. Questions from council?
I do have one. There's a number of roads in the city. When Columbia Gas went through and did a lot of updates in their pipelines, they did some interesting patching. Do you offhand know the schedule for them doing? Because they're responsible for a lot of road resurfacing in those areas, aren't they?
They are. Theirs, as they have a franchise agreement with the city, and so they're they can get in and effectively tear up our streets and maintain their lines, replace that as needed. But of course, they're supposed to repave. Now, even whether it's Columbia Gas or City of Staunton, our crews, or if we were to do a water line improvement, whoever it is, even if you patch your work, as good of a job you'll do, granted some are better than others, it's still not going to be the same as a new street. And so I don't know PW's spring repaving schedule, but I know they're trying to get to those, particularly the streets that are especially torn up, and also not be careful, plan as best as possible to not repave a street that's getting ready to have a new gas line or something going in it. Some of the SGR work that I mentioned, especially on West Beverly, will help take care of some of those patched areas.
I just make a comment? I'm so sorry. So I just, as a first year, well, it's starting my second year as a city council member, it's one of the sidewalks and roads are one of the things that I think we hear about on council more than just about anything.
Yes.
And I think there's a lot of misunderstanding about who does what in the city as far as roads and sidewalks. And what I'm learning is, and again, I'm just stating the obvious from this presentation, and thank you, Mr. Hart, for all of this. It's very interesting, but I think it's something, improving roads, improving sidewalks is something that costs a tremendous amount of money and takes a tremendous amount of time and effort. And part of that time is that it is a collaborative effort, I guess, between the city and VDOT. And I know some of these projects have started years and years and years ago and have been in process for a long time. So it's good to understand this information and to be able to explain it to our residents.
And I didn't mention some of the ones that recently completed in last 2 years or so, was that like the Central Avenue Streetscape
Yeah.
project, another one that the VDOT helped us do, as well as the Bessie Weller Safe Routes to School project and other projects prior to that.
Yeah. No, a lot of really good work has already happened, so I'm sure it will again. Thank you so much for this.
Further questions, comments? Thank you, Lyle. Appreciate it.
Yep.
Anything further, Leslie, on that?
I think it's a great transition to the next item, actually.
All right. Brings us to item E, which is a discussion of the proposed fiscal year 2025 through 2029 capital improvement project. And I see Jesse's back. Welcome.
Don't have a PowerPoint on this one, but I printed you copies, or you can follow along on your tablets. So I want to start off by giving a big thank you to everybody on the CIP committee. You'll find that committee list on page 9, with a special thanks going to Lyle Hart and Rodney Rhodes. This is only my second CIP, and so I rely on their expertise a lot when putting this together. We also have several of the other CIP committee members with us. So if you have questions, maybe they can jump in and try to help answer. The FY 25-29 CIP was introduced to the Planning Commission on January 18th. And then at their subsequent meeting in February 15th, there was a public hearing held, and they ultimately adopted the plan that night. So if you want to follow along, I'll be starting on page 17. This is where we give a big overview of the general fund plan. There's a lot of information here, and it looks a little busy. So this year I separated into 2 sections to try to help with reading the page. The top section is the reserves that we have. Reserves you can think of as savings accounts where we're putting money into them each year to save up for a larger project in the future. So most of these reserves are the ones that you've seen for many years. I do want to talk about the new ones. The IT reserve was added last year. Funding will not start until 26 because we have some rather large equipment needs in 24 and 25. So we had to push out the start date of that reserve. And then you will see the 3 reserves that were set up during last year's budget process. The annual funding is equivalent to 1 cent on the 2023 tax rate. And the 3 projects are the public library, West End revitalization, and the Uniontown improvements. So in the bottom section is the specific project section. I'm going to concentrate on the projects that are new since last year's plan, but please stop me if you have questions on any particular project so that we can discuss. You'll notice that there are 2 projects with no coloring, which indicates that there is not a funding source identified at this time. That's the pump house improvements and the Gypsy Hill Park pool house improvements. Those 2 projects have the potential to cost significantly more than we were anticipating. And we're still waiting on final reports from the engineer before we can decide how to proceed with those. So there'll be more information later about those 2. The next 3 projects, the CAD system, the Moxie renovation, and the firewall, those were on last year's plan with no changes at this moment. The North Madison repair and repaving project was added for FY 25. Typically, paving projects that are funded with our reimbursable VDOT funds are not included in our CIP because they're considered annual maintenance. This one is because it's going to require a little more work than just a typical paving job. The plan right now is to fund it with carryover reimbursable VDOT funds. There are, I've added lines for the courthouse design and the funds set aside for the improvements to the building at 2040 West Beverly. And this includes site work for JDR and the improvements to the existing building. We do not know at this time what the construction costs are. Those will be going out to bid hopefully soon. And we expect the bids back at the end of March. At what time, we'll update the CIP at that time. There was a project added for $350,000 to replace a failing retaining wall along West Johnson. You'll see that in FY '25. There was $170,000 added to upgrade our E911 consoles. These upgrades are needed in connection with the larger regional radio project that is currently underway. The last new project I want to point out in FY '25 is $100,000 for the Uniontown surveys. And I don't believe we added anything for FY '26 through '29 that wasn't there last year. So the next page I want to draw your attention to is page 33. This is our unfunded list. We had an update last week on the public safety space needs assessment that was done. I've dropped in the updated estimates from that meeting into the first 3 lines. I'm not trying to scare you, but I wanted to let you know what the updated cost estimates were. All 3 locations.
What?
One cent
yeah.
on the is not gonna help.
Was that not one time 8 million and it's now
Well,
20?
I don't think that 8 million
It's
came from any type of
7.5.
study.
Okay,
So I think at the time, that may have been for
Had the same reaction.
acquisition or something. So this is the Mosley study that we had contracted a couple, actually, I don't know, a year and a half ago, 2
know.
years maybe. So they briefed us on this report and these were the numbers that came out of that. So.
wow.
Yeah. And these are also not, there are no sites associated with these either. So,
that
I mean,
does not
except for
include-
Station 2, which is
Yes.
just an expansion of that station, Station 1 and the police station
new
would need new sites and those
plan
those
more.
costs are not
Yeah.
included.
Fire too.
So,
Yes, I just wanted to let you know that those are there. Of course, the JDR courthouse is taking priority now, so we'll have to see what we can do in the future. The next page is where our water fund projects start. Some of this will be a review from the earlier work session. Changes from last year's plan, the fluoride tank replacement work has taken priority over some of the tank recoatings. And so the tank recoatings have been pushed out to FY '25, '26, and '27 for those 3 different tanks. The construction of phase 1 of Richmond Avenue water line has been pushed back to FY '26. We've added the design of the Uniontown water extension in FY '27. The thinking here was that we needed to get the surveying done first. Not sure how long that will take, but we revisit the plan every year and update the timing. So moving on to the sewer projects on page 36, there are some new sewer projects listed under FY '24 that weren't on last year's plan, the Cole Avenue sewer line replacement, which will be done in connection with the Cole Avenue stream restoration. A project has been added for the Wayne Avenue sewer line replacement for $180,000, and the design for the old Staunton steam laundry relocation for $50,000. In FY '25 is the New Hope Road National Avenue Sewer I&I mitigation and pump station review for $500,000. And we've added the sewer line reserves that were not in last year's plan to help with unidentified line placements in the future. The last sewer project I want to point out to you is the project that was added in FY '27 for the design of the Uniontown sewer extension. Construction costs for Uniontown extension for water and sewer lines are currently not in the 5-year plan. Of course, we're reevaluating the plan each year. So those will be added going forward. The parking fund projects, the next page. The parking fund continues to struggle, and there's just not the funds there to complete all these projects. That's why you'll see the funding source is undetermined or unfunded. The stormwater projects begin on page 39. The new addition this year is the flood resiliency plan that was added for FY '25 for $350,000, and the Green Hills Industrial Park detention basins in FY '27 for $2.5 million. We have our Cole Avenue and our Gypsy Hill Stream that are our two big projects that are going on right now.
Those projects will help bring that
Yes, I hope so.
astronomical cost down.
I hope so. And we did get SLAF funding on, I think, both of those projects. So we had originally intended to fund all of Gypsy Hill with ARPA funding. But luckily we got SLAF funding that covers 50%.
Can you say what that is, Jesse? Sorry, SLAF funding?
Oh,
It doesn't, okay.
I don't know what it stands for.
Okay, that's okay.
We can
But
let
it's
you
a
know.
good thing.
Yes. That project ended up coming in over budget. I think it came in at 1.7. So we were very thankful that the SLAF funding was picking up 50% of that cost. The budget amendment or the capital transfer line that we had earlier on the consent agenda, that freed up, I believe, 400 and some thousand of ARPA funding that we're moving to the courthouse.
Stormwater Local Assistance Fund.
Thank you.
Had to Google it.
Leave it to
Okay.
Leslie to.
I thought you knew it. I was impressed.
No, I had to Google it.
And then the Asylum Creek project was moved from FY 25 to 26. I'm not sure if I said that. So the school CIP starts on page 40. The school board approved their CIP at their February 12th meeting. I've also separated the school CIP into two sections, with the top section being their reserves that are being funded, and the bottom being actual named projects that have been identified, most of which will be funded with those reserves. The Shelburne renovation is their next big project in FY 25, with the majority of the project being funded with reserves that are already on hand in their ESSER funds. But the latest estimates show that there are still additional funding needed. The schools have applied for state grant funding, and they're still waiting on the state's decision. There are two larger projects in the CIP for which funding has not been identified for. That is the purchase of real property for the Operations Center in FY 28 for $2.5 million, and the construction of the Operations Center in FY 29 for $30 million. And that brings me to the end of my introduction.
30 million.
I'll be back on April 4th for further discussion during a work session. And then the plan is to adopt this CIP along with the budget on the April 25th, or in the April 25th meeting. Are there any particular projects that you would like to discuss, or? I feel like I ran through it. This is my third time doing this same presentation.
I'll just note for council that at the planning commission meeting last week, when we had our public hearing for the CIP, we did have several residents come out to just show their appreciation for having the $500,000 budgeted in FY 25 for the repairs to North Madison Street.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they were very appreciative of that. Was in
Very
there.
appreciative. Yeah, I definitely thank staff for working on that, definitely, and for having. That was a rough street.
I finally made my way out there and
Okay.
looked at it.
It was
a
rough.
day.
Sure.
Becoming more of a gravel road.
Yes.
Yeah, thanks for pointing that out.
That does the, yeah. Does the school board have, or do you know, I mean, do they have any kind of reserves for a $30 million center?
No,
No.
they're using a lot of their reserves for the Shelburne renovation, for the
Okay.
CT classrooms and community space.
That's what I was afraid you were gonna say.
Yes.
Questions, comments?
Jesse, thank you for.
You've just been a wealth of
I know.
good
Thanks-
cheer
thanks,
tonight.
Jesse.
It's a hell of a night.
You know we love you, but I mean, you know.
This is gonna take some
I know.
digestion.
Yes.
I know we'll have future conversations.
And you're welcome to email me, reach out to me anytime. you
Well,
want.
do unfunded projects just remain unfunded? They just kind of keep, they just
Yeah.
kind of
They
keep.
just work their way up.
And then so next year we look at them and then.
We always look at how much funding we
It's like
have and then
cream
the priorities.
rises to the
Okay.
top.
Alrighty. Just
We have to
learning
evaluate our
buzz
needs and our wants, and
part. Yeah,
right now we need a courthouse, so,
we need,
and we want updated public safety facilities.
right?
We need a courthouse plus the
Yeah.
judicial system has got their hands on us.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, ma'am. Any further comments, Ms. Bower?
Or we'll continue this discussion next
Mhm.
month.
And that brings you up.
Okay, I have a few items
All
tonight.
right.
Speaking of stormwater, we talked about the Gypsy Hill Park stream restoration. You're going to start to see posters around City Hall. There's already some upstairs. That project has been awarded. And I just want to talk a little bit about the project. It's going to have a very positive impact on the environment, including reduced bank erosion, flood reduction measures, it's going to preserve historical trees in the park. It'll improve the aquatic habitat and enhance park aesthetics. It's just going to look better. And speaking of which, somebody asked earlier, yes, it will contribute to the total load reduction requirements by about 10%. So that's great. So we're very pleased that that project is underway or will be underway soon. We have several boards and commissions that need fine folks to apply. So I just want to run down that list. I know Mr. Knight did a social media push on that this week as well. Redevelopment and Housing Authority, they help provide safe and affordable housing to members of the community. The Joint Industrial Development Authority of Stafford County and Staunton. This assists government units throughout the Commonwealth in financing their capital and other project needs. So if you have an interest in finance, that's the board for you. They only meet twice a year, one of which is in person and one is virtual. The Valley Community Services Board, they provide community-based behavioral health, development disability, and substance use disorder services to the community. The Library Advisory Board, they advise the library on the selection of reading, recorded, and related materials. The Tourism Advisory Board, they advise the city on various tourism promotional issues and provides input on the budget process for tourism. And then the Agricultural Forestal Advisory Committee, they provide advice to the Planning Commission and City Council concerning the nature of farming, forestry, and agricultural resources. So those are the boards and commissions. If you're interested, you can visit the city's website or talk to Mr. Kesker over there, and he'll happily direct you to where you need to go. Next, we have a Weston Community Workshop coming up on March 5th. That's at 5:30. This is the second of 3 community engagement meetings for the West End Revitalization Strategy Plan. Meeting details are March 5th, as I said, 5:30 to 7. This is at Montgomery Hall Park in the Irene Gibbons Administration Building. Citizens should arrive by 5:30. The workshop will start then with a brief presentation outlining what was learned at the January 9th open house and the community survey that was recently done. The city's consultants will present a draft of the community's needs and goals for review. Well, then the participants will break out into groups for discussion and brainstorming with the help of consultants and city staff. And then a large portion of the workshop will allow time for the small groups to create up to 5 specific actions per goal for the West End. This meeting will be recorded, and the plan is to post the recording of the meeting and a recreation of the meeting activity to the website after the meeting. And it will also provide an option for follow-up public input for those unable to attend in person. And finally, Uniontown, there's a community meeting hosted by the Planning Commission and city staff for the property owners of Uniontown on Wednesday, March 13th at the Staunton Public Library from 5:30 to 7. Property owners will receive notices about the event and are encouraged to attend if they have any questions about the proposed mass rezoning of the neighborhood to the new traditional residential development district, a zoning district that was approved by City Council just a couple of weeks ago. This is an open house style format that will allow residents to attend whenever it's convenient for them. And Mr. Robertson already talked about HB 136. I was going to mention that, but that's very exciting that that's going to be in front of the governor. So we're also very excited about that. So that's all I have tonight.
Good thing. All right, that brings us to matters from the public. This part of City Council's agenda is entitled Matters from the Public. It is a time the council sets aside to hear from citizens and others about a wide variety of subjects. A copy of the City Council's Matters from the Public rules are available from Mr. Kesticker or online on the City of Staunton webpage. You are asked to familiarize yourself with those rules before commenting. Please come to the podium or begin your call, identify yourself, and complete your remarks within 5 minutes. Would anyone like to speak under Matters from the Public this evening? Go ahead.
Of course you want to speak, Mary. When do you not want to? Good to see you.
My name is Dr. Mary Miller. I live at 471 Albemarle Avenue. Came to talk about rank order and diversity, inclusion, and equity. In January, I was collecting petition signatures for people who wanted to run for school board and city council in November. It was cold, so I parked my car at the recycling center to provide a warm place for anyone to sit if they chose to sign the petitions. I explained that anyone choosing to run was required to get petitions signed. It was nonpartisan, and they had until November election to learn about the candidates. A Staunton city truck driver drove his city truck into the center. After a few minutes, he came to my car and told me, "You can't do that here." I had over 270 signatures by then, so I left. I thought the recycling center was a public space and I was free to speak. I had no idea what authority that truck driver had or if I had free speech at the center. I called the city hall, but the answer was not known. I was told they would find out and get back to me. On January 25th of this year, the Augusta Free Press wrote that an Augusta County Schools bus driver told Black students to allow white students to use the word nigger. The bus driver has not been held accountable. January 31st of this year, students at Buffalo Gap High School were witnessed hurling racial insults at Black students. That is a way of bullying. What self-determined inadequacy motivates them to bully? On Sunday, February 18th, at Allen Chapel, I sat next to an African-American mother who told me that her children had the same insults thrown at them 25 years ago at Buffalo Gap. She had gone to the administration several times, but the racial insults never abated. Social hierarchy is passed down through families. It is a system of ranking people. It allows people to have power over those they believe they have a lower rank. People use hierarchy to feel more power. Some people need to feel control in order to feel safe and secure. For this, they use rank. Abuse and bullying are ways to control and hold rank. So what harm does it do? Humiliation, intimidation, and bullying cause long-term adverse effects. These effects make it more difficult for victims to reach their full potentials, and this leads to a lack of equity. 75 years ago, in 1949, 10 months after my mother committed suicide, my father took me to my mother's brother's farm in rural Nebraska. I was 6 years old. They didn't want me, but I knew I was not safe in my father's house, so I lived with their abuse. My aunt said, "You're not like us. You're not one of us." They had rank and power. They saw me as different, and they did not tolerate diversity. One consequence of their intolerance was to spend my life without a home or inclusion in a family. We desperately need a leader to our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee. We need someone who is committed and strong enough to do the hard work. With the right leader, Staunton could become a national model for what is right. My Haudenosaunee niece, Joanne Shenandoah, saying, "When you are gone, what will they believe about you? What will they say? What did you achieve? Did you give your best? How would you want them to feel when they think about you?" Thank you.
Mr. Kester, we have anyone on the phone?
Yes, sir.
Caller, go ahead, please.
This is Brenda Mead. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. Tonight, the city manager presented a list of the board and commission positions that are open now. There's a very important key board position that's coming up, the Planning Commission. Judith Wiggins' term expires in May. I'd just like to say that as we are embarking on the next comprehensive plan process, this is not the time to deny Judith Wiggin the opportunity to continue to serve on the Planning Commission board. So I would appreciate it if the planning or the nominations committee would offer her the opportunity to continue to serve on the Planning Commission. Thank you.
Who's next?
Good evening, Mayor Claffey and members of the City Council. Thank you so much for this opportunity to speak. My name is Ingrid Blanton, and I live on North Madison Street, hence my reason for being here today with a number of my neighbors. We are very encouraged to see in the CIP that $500,000. We're really grateful, as has already been expressed, for the great staff in the Public Works Department. They've come to look at our street. They've attended some neighborhood meetings. They've answered a lot of our questions. And it seems that those conversations have led to this inclusion in the CIP. And we're very grateful for the attention that's been paid to this matter. We're here now to encourage your support of including that line item in the CIP. And as I think has also been alluded to earlier, that this has been a matter of deferred maintenance. So along these lines, it's my hope that the time that is taken to repair the street and the necessary funds that are allocated to ensure the work is done, that it does result in a street that goes beyond repaving. I think we heard earlier that that it's definitely not just a matter of repaving, that we really do need a new street. This project has been put off for many, many years. I spoke with a number of people who've worked with the city for decades, and they said that they had never done any work on the street. So in addition to this being done, we also hope that it is done in a really quality way. And one of the considerations we hope is taken into account is that we are in a historic district. And while we as private homeowners do have to meet those requirements, we hope that the quality of the repaving and the street construction also meets those kind of requirements. We heard earlier about the Columbia Gas project and the repaving and some of the patchwork done there. That resulted in some patches of sidewalk that were also redone in this glaringly white concrete and these highly visible, unsightly, white PVC pipes sticking out. This is, of course, really detrimental to the work in the historic district and the requirements that we're all held to as individuals. And the last point I'd like to make here is that collectively, the private homeowners on this street, just a few short blocks, that our investment in these properties has well exceeded the $500,000 that you are considering here. And I think that's a really important thing to take into account, not only for our street, but for your consideration of the entire CIP and the considerable investment you make in infrastructure in the street, is that in order to encourage private business owners and homeowners to invest in the community, it's really vital that you invest in the kind of infrastructure. So thank you, so much for your consideration of this. I know I've got a number of people behind me also from North Madison Street, but just really big thank you, and that we look forward to having the street repaired.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Kisker.
Yes, sir.
Caller, go ahead, please.
All right, can you hear me?
Yes.
This is Patrick Scott on Topside Circle. So I wanted to start out by giving my appreciation for some of the things that I heard earlier with the council really talking about wanting to let the citizens make decisions on the referendums that were coming down the pipe from the legislature. With that being said, one of the things that I wanted to just kind of touch on, one of the ones that gives me some concerns is if the General Assembly ends up giving the authority for the skill games to come to play. I really hope that they do that back to the city and to where those decisions can be made through the citizens. I'm hopeful that that does happen, that hopefully then we can vote it down. As someone who works in public safety and has seen the establishments firsthand and what they draw to the area, obviously I would be in big opposition of those, but just wanted to throw that out there. Especially, I know that Staunton hasn't had nearly the problems that some neighboring jurisdictions have had, but if it does come down to a city council vote and not a referendum for the citizens, I would highly suggest that the folks on council work in talking with other areas to find out the detrimental effects of those locations. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Jones?
Yes, my name's Jeffrey Jones, and I am a resident of North Madison Street. And I just wanted to echo what has already been said by Ingrid. We first of all appreciate all of the attention of people coming out with rulers and looking at things and going down in the ditches next to the curbings. And you guys, the city has been great to just come by and say, hi, we want your money. We really do want it, because we really do need to fix that road. I heard from somebody the other day, 37 years since anything's been done on that. And Columbia Gas needs to come back out and replant some bushes my wife lost, but they went ahead and tried their best. But we have done a thing that we want to make sure that everybody knows. If we do change those places where the pavement was changed in color, we have our names down there, because one night we went out and put our names in the concrete. So don't change that. And so I thank you all, and I appreciate your time, and please come by and see us and bring your money.
Yeah, Steve, you got the checkbook, right?
Mr. Kester, we have another caller.
No, sir, I have no one with their hands raised.
Please go ahead.
I'm Janet Ani. I'm another North Madison Street person to thank particularly the CIP planning people for paying attention to North Madison Street. I'm here to echo what Ingrid Blanton and my other neighbors have said, and appreciate the city council looking into this and hopefully voting on the budget. My concern is that the street is not getting any better. Every time it rains, every time somebody runs down the street or tries to park the car, my tires are really getting worn from trying to park on that street. The sooner we can start this, the better. And I am concerned that this will be put off while the street continues to deteriorate. So if we could please pay attention to this sooner rather than later, that would be terrific. But in the meantime, thank you for taking care of this.
Thank you. Mr. Kesker?
No, sir, I have no one with their hands raised.
Come ahead, sir.
Good evening. I'm Nelson Hay. I live at 223 North Madison. Like the others, I'm here because I'm happy. How often does that happen? We really are thrilled to find this money in the capital improvement plan. I just want to say, for anybody else that may be looking and saying, wow, that's a lot of money for one street, North Madison is a sorry case and really does need the funding. As has been said, it has been a case of neglect for many, many years, apparently. At this point, it's often unsafe in places. I think it's certainly unattractive for a historic district where we'd like tourists to walk through and see it. I want to add a tale that when the last spring, when the budget came out, street budget for the calendar for 2023, what streets they were going to pave, I was really surprised that North Madison wasn't on the list. And so I got in my car and went to all 27 streets. And I can tell you, there were only one or two that even came close to being like North Madison. So we're very grateful that the funding is there. We're here to support it, and we encourage you to do likewise. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Mr. Kesker,
No, sir, I have no one with their hands raised.
would anyone else like to speak under matters from the public? All right, well, in that case, the meeting is adjourned. Good evening. And thank you to all the North Madison Street people that came out to talk to us tonight.